Hi, welcome to the Acting for Stage and Screen podcast. My name's James Harvey, and I'm the programme leader of a brand new acting degree in York, created in partnership with ALRA, the Academy of Live and Recorded Arts. It's called the BA in Acting for Stage and Screen, ALRA endorsed. More on that in a bit. The idea of this podcast is that I'll be interviewing loads of successful professionals within the theatre, TV and film industries. Lots of actors, but also people working in other areas of the industry too. Directors, writers, producers and so on. Through chatting with my guests, I want to find out about their careers, their methods, and to get an honest insight into what it's like working professionally in stage and screen. I hope you enjoy the pod. And if you're someone who wants to train professionally as an actor, then take a look at our course. Follow us on Instagram at York College BA Acting and go to our webpage to find out more. You can apply on UCAS course code BA45. We're auditioning this year and we start teaching in September 2021. Maybe you'll be with us. I'll give you some more information on the degree at the end of the pod. But for now, I hope you enjoy this episode of the Acting for Stage and Screen podcast. Hello and welcome to the Acting for Stage and Screen podcast. Today's guest is the film producer Lynette Howell Taylor. Lynette's movies include A Star is Born, Captain Fantastic, Blue Valentine, The Place Beyond the Pines, Big Eyes, The Accountant, and many more. So, as you can tell, there's a lot to talk about. So let's dig in. Lynette, welcome to the Acting for Stage and Screen podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So part of my aim with this podcast is to give listeners an insight into what the theatre and, in this case, the film industries are really like, and particularly for acting and drama students to find out how these industries operate beyond their rehearsal rooms. So before we get into the details of your own magnificent career, would it be okay if you just sort of explained in general terms what is actually involved in being a film producer?
Sure, absolutely. I feel like I get that question all the time because nobody has any idea what it actually means. So I think that the term has become a bit more of a catch-all for lots of different types of people who make stuff happen. I mean, that's what I sort of think about the term is I'm a person that makes something out of nothing, figures out how to get something made, and in whatever means necessary. So the kind of producer that I am is I'm a creative producer, which really means that I care very much, and at the forefront of everything I do is story, and really telling a story. And then the other side is sort of the logistical, financial, practical side of how do you go about that? How do you support the other storytellers you're working with, whether that's your director, your writer, your actors, your technicians? My job is to bring all those people together in a way that creates the best possible outcome for that story to be told in whatever medium you're telling that story. And it's not really that different for whether it's theatre or film or television. Some of the specifics are the same, but fundamentally that's what the role of a producer is.
As a creative producer, and I assume there are some in the business that are less so, but you know, your body of work has always, from what I've seen, it's always kind of looked to the left field. It's always looked for sort of challenging work, stuff that really, it's not always mainstream, although it's been very successful. Do you think, have you developed a certain style or preference for certain projects from an artistic point of view over the years?
Yeah, I think that I definitely, I think that there's the one thing you can't really teach people, and I don't know that you should, is taste. And what you're drawn to. And you and I could sit and watch the same piece of content. We could watch the same play, we could watch the same television show, and we could come away feeling completely differently about it. And that's the beauty of art, and that's the beauty of what we all do. And so for me, my taste has sort of been my guiding light, and it doesn't mean that I think it's better or worse than anybody else's. It's mine. And so in order for me to feel passionate and want to get up every day and really try to fight to get things made in a business that's very hard to get things made in, I have to feel like personally just really excited about it, in the same way that when I go see a great play, I'm just like, I'm hopping around and want to talk about it with the people I went to see it with. And that's why you have sort of the term water cooler. I mean, people watch a television show and then the next day they want to talk about it with people they're at work with, and they want to talk about movies and these communal experiences of watching art and watching content in whatever form. It's about how it personally reaches you and touches you. And as a producer, it's really no different. So I think that I always want to make something that feels like it hasn't been done before, or if it at least is in a territory that's familiar, that I'm trying to approach it, or I'm working with a storyteller, filmmaker, director, writer who wants to approach it in a fresher way, in a way that I haven't seen before. And and some of it is also about opportunity. When you start early on, it's hard to, you can't sort of start out as a film producer and say, okay, I want to go make Lord of the Rings, even though that's exactly what I wanted to do. Was that, I sort of stopped being a theatre producer. I was like, right, I'm going to be a film producer and I want to make Lord of the Rings. It's just not possible. Like, I don't have the experience, I don't have access to it. I didn't, it's to something like sort of that grand and on that scale. So I started much smaller and had access to kind of the sort of the smaller dramas. And that was what kind of drew me in and got me excited. And then it sort of built from there. And as the years have gone on, I've tried to work across genre. And there's some genres that I just don't know that I'll ever be that excited about. Like, I'm not a person that enjoys horror. I don't like watching horror. I'm a big baby. I get really scared. So I don't really want to make it either. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. And it makes a ton of money for lots of other people. It's just not for me. I would love to do comedy. I don't have a lot of comedy on my resume. I think it's because I'm not very funny. But I really like watching great comedy, but I don't really know how to develop it. So I'm always kind of searching for, okay, what's the sort of the great comedy that I can do. But drama is something that I feel like I know how to do creatively. Again, like logistically, the job is kind of the same, but creatively, you have to find something that you feel like you can contribute to, or at least I do.
It's funny actually you should say that, because all right, you haven't been making kind of slapstick comedies over the years, but there's always a sort of quirkiness. I mean, Unicorn Store's a kind of quirky comedy, isn't it? There's a comic tone even in something like The Accountant. Like it's not direct.
Because I think levity is so important. I mean, the truth is, like, anything that is even the darker stuff, I think you have to find humor in it. And so I think all my movies have some form of levity and some form of humor, and at least they aim to be, because I think you need the light when you're dealing with heavy subject matter, and it's really, I think, you just can't slog through stuff that feels like homework.
You alluded to you started out in theatre production. I was just wondering what your route was into this. How does a girl from the Wirral become a big-time Hollywood producer?
I have no idea. I had a very like working class British upbringing. I mean, I'm from Liverpool, was born in Crosby, lived on the Wirral, and then around 15, sort of was always really into acting. And so I joined the youth theatre, like a local youth theatre, and I was part of that for about 4 years, Wirral Youth Theatre, and I performed, and I loved it. And I really loved being on stage, and I loved the community aspect of theatre. But I was like a solid actor, but I couldn't sing. I have no vocal ability. And I was like a solid dancer, but I didn't ever really train or do it properly. And so, I was kind of like, when it came to thinking about, okay, what am I going to do for university? I really just wanted to be at drama school. Like I wanted to be at drama school, and Royal Youth Theatre was kind of was sort of the impetus for that. And so I auditioned for the acting program at LIPA. You didn't know this, did you?
I didn't. I didn't know this. I thought you were always destined to take over the world. I didn't know you were an actor originally.
With one of our mutual friends, Paul Deacon, and I were at the same audition. That's how I met him. And so I auditioned and was terrible, because it's a singing audition, and good God, I can't sing. And Donna Sotomaritini called Suzanne Burns, who was running the management program, because on my application I had put that my second choice was management. And she had said, I think you should meet her. And so then I got a phone call from Suzanne saying, like, look, I don't think you're going to get into the acting program, but if you want to come and interview for the management program, we actually think you'd be much better suited for that. And they were completely right. Like, I mean, they couldn't have been more right. And so I did that, and then I ended up on the management course, and I'm so glad, because I have insane respect for actors. I love actors. Like, actors are the reason why I do what I do. Like, I love performance. I love watching people perform. I love watching people disappear into performance and being part of enabling that to happen. I think actors are brilliant and genius, and I love being around them. And I am not one, and that's okay. And I'm so happy to have discovered that early on. So I did the management course at LIPA, and it was for me, it was a remarkable, life-changing experience, because I think at the time, it was one of those universities where you got out of it as much as you put into it. And I spent a lot of time doing all the sort of extra curricular stuff that was available. So I would always produce other people's stuff. And so I produced like 4 or 5 like mini plays or musicals, and like they didn't call it producing, because no one used that term 20 years ago. They didn't really use that term. I don't even think they still use it at LIPA. Like, but that's what that course is. It's a producing course, really. It's all the fundamentals of producing. And so I moved, from there I started doing work. I worked at the Liverpool Empire. And then I met people through there that hooked me up at the Lyceum in London. And then I did some work experience for an actor's friend's agent. And then that agent gave me an introduction to a casting director. And I did work experience for a casting director. And then I ended up working full time for both the agent and the casting director. And then they basically, it was sort of one of those things where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Out of LIPA, I was excited to work in production at some point, but I was like, do I want to be an agent? Do I want to work in casting? And so I tried it all out, and after sort of a few months of doing the agent thing, I was like, I enjoy this, it's not what I want to do. And then I loved casting, but it felt too limiting for me. And so the casting director, David Grinrod, he called his friend who was looking for an assistant on a musical in London, and I basically went and took that job as an assistant on a musical. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to be in a production. Like, I want to be over all of it. Like, I don't just want to be in one part of it. I want to be over all of it. And so I became an assistant on that show. And it was a brand new musical. And so I sort of got to be part of the inception of that creative process, which was incredible. Sort of seeing how that came to be from start to finish, and I did that for like 8 months, and then the company that financed that musical was an American company, and they really liked what I did, because it's sort of one of those serendipitous things where there's not a big hierarchy in theatre. You're either the producer, the general manager, a coordinator, and assistant. Like, there's just not a lot of levels in between, and the coordinator kind of quit after like a month, and no one filled the job. And so even though it usually takes about like 5 or 6 years to kind of get to that job, like, it was just empty. And so I just started doing it, and then they ended up giving me the credit as a coordinator on the show. And so I kind of just like skipped like 5-6 years of steps.
There's a narrative similarity here with A Star Is Born.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was great. And then they offered me a job. That company offered me a job in the US and overseeing and being part of the theatre branch of their company. And I basically moved. I moved when I was 22, and I spent 3 years working on West End shows and Broadway shows and finding new musicals for that company to produce and finance. And like an unbelievable education, life experience, life-changing experience. And that's how I ended up. That's how I ended up in America.
That's how you ended up in America. And since then, you've gone on and made so many films. I'm not going to try and do a complete survey of your career. I don't think we'd have time for that. But I want to pick out a few and talk about them in more detail. And one of my absolute favourites of yours, and I'm very far from being alone here, is Captain Fantastic, which starred Viggo Mortensen. So you did get to work on Lord of the Rings in the end, kind of.
I did. I did. I did.
And it was written and directed by Matt Ross. So for anyone who hasn't seen that film, well, you're a fool and you should. But for those of you that haven't, Lynette, how would you describe it? What's it all about?
Oh, it's incredibly timely, actually. It's about a family who has lived off the grid for many, many years. It's a husband and wife and their 6 children, and they've basically been raising their 6 kids off the grid for most of for about I guess 18 years, 16 to 18 years. And at the beginning of the film, there's a family tragedy, and the family has to go back and integrate into society, and it's sort of really about the different ways that we parent, the different ways that we approach living and living in society. It's about technology. It's about sort of the simple side of life. It's about education, and it sounds like it's sort of this issue-based movie, but it's really this incredible road trip. And that movie has a lot of comedy in it too. That movie's pretty funny, and it's to me, like it's actually one of my favorite films I've worked on. Just because when I read that script, I was like, oh, I've never seen a movie like this before. I've never seen anything that does this quite in this way. And the writing was really unique.
Yeah, I was going to say that seems to be what you're looking for. From what you said earlier, you're looking for something that is just, oh, I've not seen that before. This is a new way of expressing something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and also singular voices. I think that a lot of the really the most consistent thing in my work is that I've made lots of movies and content that have either one or two voices that are very much at the center of them, and lots of writer directors, and you can really feel the individual approach to telling the story. And so Matt Ross, he wrote that and he directed it, and his writing and his work is just very specific to him and very unique to him. And that to me is one of the most exciting things about making any as a producer, about making any piece of content, is working with a singular vision, singular voice filmmaker. And he's definitely one of those people.
Did you know Matt Ross beforehand or yeah?
Yeah, so Matt's an actor. He's been acting for like 20 years. For anyone that watches Silicon Valley, he's oh god, I've forgotten his character's name now. He plays like the head of the bad tech company. Anyone that watched the show will know. Anyway, but he was introduced to me by another actor friend that I'd worked with, and he had a tiny little movie that was a two-hander called 28 Hotel Rooms that he wanted to direct, that he wrote. And so we did that first, and then after that movie he gave me the script to Captain Fantastic and was like, this is what I want to do next. And then we basically pursued Viggo for 2 years. Took us 2 years to get Viggo to say yes to that movie, and it was quite the pursuit. It was like, because his agent was like, he has to do this, but Viggo's he's very singularly focused, so he really does one thing at a time, and he really throws himself at it. And so and that even comes to promoting his movies. When he's promoting his movies, he takes that just as seriously as he does acting in his movies, preparing for his movies. And so we really waited for him. We were really patient, and we just kept emailing him. We knew he liked it. We knew he wanted to do it, but just couldn't quite commit. And we just kept kind of being persistent. And then one day he just said, okay, great, let's do it. Yeah. And then that was it. He was in and we were off the races.
I mean, it's probably self-evident if you've seen the film, but why was it so important for you guys to cast him? Was sometimes you hear about writers hearing the words of their script as they write them in the voice of a particular actor. Was it one of those?
No, but he was definitely the first choice. Right. I mean, he was Matt's first choice from the beginning. And there was only one other period where Viggo, we didn't think he was going to do it, and we went to one other person, pretty giant movie star, who also really considered it, and then didn't. And then we ended up going back to Viggo, who ultimately there was just sort of no one else that could do that. I think part of it is, I also think for actors, I think audiences like to see actors do something different. It's people get tired of watching the same kinds of performance over and over again, and he is an unbelievably versatile actor that can do so many different things. And he's just one of the best. And I think we wanted somebody that was really going to embrace that, the approach to making the movie. I mean, Viggo planted the garden in the compound himself. Like, he drove out with his truck from his house in Idaho with a bunch of plants, and he basically planted the garden, and he slept in the forest for 3 weeks before we started shooting. Like, we had a hotel room for it, and he never went to it. Like, he just would sleep in the forest, and he just really got into it. And not everybody does. Not every actor needs to or wants to participate in that kind of way. And he's just one of those actors that really wanted to embody that character, and then it shows. You can feel it. It like bounces off of the screen in the performance. Like, they're not acting, they're just living. They're being the person that they've been for the past several weeks, because that's what he was doing.
I think driving out and planting your own garden in the middle of nowhere is maybe the sweetest method acting story I've ever heard.
We were just don't get eaten by bears, otherwise we can't make the movie.
Yeah, that's a Werner Herzog film. That's a very different film.
It's a very different movie. They were building the compound around him. It wasn't even built when he first came out. It was partly, so he couldn't even sleep in the tent. We were like, where's he sleeping? And our production designer was like, I don't know, I just saw him walking around the forest earlier today. And we were like, okay.
There's a scene in the film that mirrors that, isn't it? When they visit his sister, and Viggo and his family all sleep in the garden rather than the rooms that are made up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Mortensen's the lead, really, and an incredible performance, but it was really an ensemble piece, wasn't it? And the majority of that ensemble that are teenagers and children, even really young children in some cases. So what's the casting process like when you need to find actors of that age that are capable of conveying really challenging themes like in Captain Fantastic?
There's really a reason why some casting directors are just genuinely revered and excellent at what they do. It's a real skill, and it's such a specific skill. And I've done a lot of movies that have had kids in them. I don't know what's wrong with me. All my movies seem to have children in them, and lots of them too. I've made so many movies in schools. So I knew sort of the best at doing it. And Jeannie McCarthy, who cast the film, has also worked with Viggo several times. And he wanted to be part of that process and reading with the kids in auditions. But it was a straight sort of audition process. But one of the things that was really unique about this is that we wanted kids that had sort of additional abilities, because we weren't sure how we were going to use them. And so we asked all the kids, to anyone that auditioned, we asked them to also submit a tape that, with some sort of ability that they had, whether that was singing or gymnastics or physicality or piano, or because we just wanted to see how we could then incorporate that into this family. And the entire ending of the movie came about because Sammy Isla, who plays one of the girls in the film, one of the twins, she's just this gorgeous voice. And we were like, oh, we have to have them sing. They have to be a sing. Singing has to be a big part of this.
This is
and Annalise Basso can also sing, and George Mackay can play the guitar, and and they're just a musical group of actors. And so Matt really incorporated that into the story. and the entire ending was written, or sort of repurposed a little bit, because we cast a specific actor. It was not supposed to be the song, and I'm not going to give it away for people that haven't seen it, but there's a song towards the end of the film, and originally that was a Prince song, and it was very different vibe, and then you cast this group of people, and you have to lean into, well, what is it that this group can do together, and then build it so that it can be the most successful version, because it's the most organic and natural based on what their individual abilities are. And so that was pretty unique in terms of the casting process of this movie. And I just remember watching all these videos of all these incredible kids doing like aerial arts and like scaling trees and like gymnastics, and I was like, God, there's so much talent out there. It was really one of the more fun casting experiences I've had on making a movie.
I bet. Yeah, it's interesting you raised that scene. I was going to ask you about that scene. It really stands out in my memory. And you were talking about the yeah, I don't want to do spoilers. Let's just call it the rebel funeral scene, shall we?
Right.
Like where they sing, and we're talking about them singing Guns N' Roses' "Sweet Child of Mine."
Yeah. Sweet Child of Mine.
It was stunning, really, and she does. You're right, have such a gorgeous voice. It's a beautiful scene. How quickly can you tell that you have something special in the can when you've got that scene? Like, are you on set watching it thinking this is special already, or does it reveal itself in the rushes? Does it only come across in the edit? When do you know?
Oh, when do you know? You never really know until you see a first cut, I don't think. I mean, I think you can tell on set when you feel like magic is being made. I think you can tell when the performances are there. I mean, this group of people were a family, and some of them are still a family. I mean, the two youngest children, when they came to the movie, they didn't know each other. They're now actually brother and sister. The two littlest. And,
so, just explain.
No, I mean their parents met on the movie, and
wow,
and they became a family.
Aww.
And they have been a family for 5 years, and they're an incredible family. And,
I mean, they look predestined to be a family. Like they couldn't be more similar, could they?
They did look like they were siblings.
Yeah.
But now they really are siblings.
That's so sweet.
Which is kind of amazing. But we are a family. Like we have a text chain and an email chain going amongst it's myself and the director and Viggo and the kids, and then Catherine Hahn and Steve Zahn, and we regularly email each other just like poetry and like thinking of you, and like here's what I'm doing in the world, and like everyone really kind of became a family on that movie. And the kids they all like lived together, they would go on road trips together, they would do stuff together, and they've remained really, really close. All the parents have remained close, and all the kids have remained close, and it really was like a real family. And that's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable, really, that happened. And,
I think,
and a lot of that has to do with Viggo. I mean, he really does treasure people that he works with on his movies. I mean, I did get to live out my Lord of the Rings fantasy.
Like he's really arrogant. He's really arrogant.
He's really arrogant, but not just that. Like he was in LA. He doesn't live in LA. And we had a dinner, and it was the Captain Fantastic family and the Lord of the Rings family. So it was all the hobbits and Orlando and Viggo, and I got to be there, and I was like, this is the greatest day ever.
That's amazing.
I did get to live out my Lord of the Rings fantasy.
Wow, I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. What was I going to say? You've kind of thrown me there, because that's just sort of like just like the dream dinner, isn't it? Yeah. I know what I was going to say. Yeah. I was going to say that it's not just the nuclear family, but it's the extended family that had that real ring of truth too. So you said Catherine and Steve Zahn, who is one of the best sort of under the radar actors I know as well. Him in Treme. Do you watch Treme?
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, I've seen him. Yeah, he's a genius. Like, and those two together were. I mean, we could have made an entire movie just out of their improvisation. They're so funny. The two of them they're absolutely brilliant. The two of them. There was so much we couldn't put in the movie, and they came in and out. They came in for a few days. I mean, we only shot 3 days. All their stuff was done in 3 days, and it was like the most fun 3 days. And the movie's like, we shot the movie in such a in like really kind of an order. Like we shot all the forest stuff first, and then we shot all the road stuff because it was all over the place. And then
I was going to ask actually, because the locations are stunning.
New Mexico.
Oh, it's New Mexico. I was just wondering.
It was Washington State, and then we shot everything that's like where they live, their compound. We shot all of that in Washington State, all over Washington. And then Eastern Washington looks a little bit more like the middle of the country, and so we did some of the like second half of the road trip stuff in Eastern Washington, like where they stop up at the RV park, and then we basically filmed the bus for like a few days. We just like had like helicopters, and we just had the bus drive to New Mexico.
So I was going to ask you about those amazing locations, because they're stunning, and there's mountains and forests and the open road. Obviously you have location scouts. How involved are you though with sort of final decisions on location?
Everything. I mean, I have a very close relationship with my directors, and I don't really get involved in many movies where I'm not where I don't have enough of a creative relationship where it's really a dialogue, that I'm there as a sounding board. I'm there to like give my opinion, and that's everybody from Matt Ross to Bradley Cooper. The only person that doesn't really apply to is Tim Burton, who I had the great fortune of working with and adore, and think is a mad genius. But he knows exactly what he wants, and he is a gifted genius, and he's been doing it forever, and I revere him. And so I'm not telling him what locations I think are best for the film.
No.
But otherwise, I have a very I'm a part of like every scout. I go on every scout and look at all the location photos, and often it's but you're servicing the director's vision at the end of the day. Like, it's not about what I think is the best location. It's about like what they've told me they need for their scene, or their whatever it is, and then my role is to give an opinion on whether I think that specific location is servicing what it is that they want to achieve. It always comes back. It's not about like whether I think a house is pretty or whether I think a house is the right house. It's about what do they think it is, and am I in agreement that like it's conveying that idea.
Yeah, and obviously it varies with as you say, with each different project, with each different director, but it sounds like the director producer relationship for you is quite an intensely creative anyway.
Yeah.
Do you have?
Otherwise I'm not really that interested in it.
Yeah. You want to collaborate, right? Yeah. Just don't want to hand over the check. How much interaction would you typically have with the actors throughout the whole process, I guess? So like the pre-production, the shoot, the editing, even you mentioned the promotional work. Like, what's it like?
Yeah.
What are you up to?
It really depends on the filmmaker. Depends on the cast. Early on it was less, but I'm always very, very deeply involved in casting. It's one of the things I think that you can have an amazing script, you can have an amazing director, but if you do not cast your play, your television show, your film well, it's all for nothing. At the end of the day, when the cameras roll, the only thing that matters is what is happening in front of them. Like, that's it. Everything else that you sort of work towards, it's all about creating a moment where performers can feel safe to experiment and, go to the places that they need to go to make it worthwhile, the effort that everyone else has put into getting to that moment. And so actors are the most crucial part of any project, and so I have very big opinions about casting. I think I have pretty good taste. I've worked with a lot of people on their first or second movies that have then gone on to become movie stars, like giant movie stars, and that auditioned for stuff, and that myself and the director hand in hand would be like that person, and that's it's like a nice feeling to feel like a sense of discovery of talent. For me, like discovering talent is so exciting, especially with actors. So I'm really involved in that part. On set, I'm not really very involved at all. It's really about the relationship with the director and the actors, and that's a sacred relationship and should be protected. I tend to have, but I do have performance notes. Like I sit behind the monitor and I watch, but then I will very discreetly, have a dialogue with my director about performance. Like I'll give notes to the director, and then the director can choose whether or not they want to take the feedback or not. And some of the directors I work with find that relationship invaluable and insist on me being at the monitor at all times, and like that collaboration is part of their process. And I have several filmmakers who that's my relationship with them, and then there's other filmmakers that don't want it, don't need it in that particular moment, and it's just that when they're on set, like it's their relationship, and they're not looking for me to say, I think you should go one more time, and I feel like we need more intensity here, or I think that like she's not conveying this thing, or I think that you're not getting this thing that you're actually after, and I think the scene is about the AI. Some people don't want to hear it, and that's totally fine. The relationships that I enjoy the most are the ones where I have that communication with the director, but it's really important that it stays away. For me, it's really important that it stays away from the actor. Like I try not to have actors know that I'm like whispering in the director's ear. I don't think it makes people feel comfortable. So I'm usually like away from the set. I have my own monitor, and then the director will come out to me and we'll have a conversation, and they'll go back in. So it stays away from the performance. That's sacred. That space is sacred.
It's really
sacred. And then
sounds like a dramaturgical role almost, like in theatre.
I guess. Yeah, I guess. And then from there, and then I get much more involved sometimes with actors in the marketing. They involving them in trailers or posters or press and publicity, and then that's sort of when you kind of come back around to the performers again. And sometimes you really bond, and you form like long friendships with people that especially when you're on location with actors, especially when they're on location with anybody. Like when anytime you go out of town, it's like being in summer camp, and you just, you're on, Captain Fantastic, we were on the road for 6 months, and it was us, and it was really hard. But that bonds people, and that bonds people for life, often. And there's some movies that I've made where I haven't seen people in years, and they may not even know who I am. They may be like, oh, we did a movie together. And by the way, sometimes I forget. I'm like, oh my God, I think that person was in a movie of mine. So sometimes it's very intense, and friendships are fun, and sometimes you're just like, it's a little bit more like a job.
Yeah. Well, by all accounts there, Captain Fantastic was a lot more than a job. And given your love of the actors, especially Viggo, did it mean a lot when he was nominated for, an Oscar and a BAFTA and a Golden Globe as Best Actor in that film? What does that recognition mean to the actor, and what does it mean to you?
It's always sort of been the icing on the cake. I used to put a lot more stock in awards, and I think that recognition for excellent work is a part of our business, and I love I produce the Oscars. I obviously think that it's a crucial part of our business, and I enjoy the celebration of artists and celebration of good work, and so I'm a big fan of it. For me, it's wonderful when it happens. It's incredible when it happens. There's been many, many times where it hasn't happened, and that feeling of like feeling let down was one that I didn't want to have be part of my life. And so it's much more important now for me that the work is center, and that the audience reaction to the movie is sort of the thing that gives me the most pleasure. It's when you put your movie on, when you premiere your movie at Sundance for the first time, and an audience is like openly weeping, or you get a standing ovation, and you're like, this is why I made this. I made this for people's reaction. I made this for this conversation where you're telling me how much you love the movie. Like that to me has more validity and gives me more joy the recognition. Not that I don't think that the recognition is truly terrific, and I think there's an element of being recognized by your peers, being recognized by people that are the best in the business, and it's that in itself is wonderful. And there's and I think Viggo was thrilled, and I think often people feel the same kind of conflict. Like, I think it's wonderful to get that recognition. It also makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It's a whole press circuit that then you have to kind of be on, and Viggo loves to talk about his work, so he can do that stuff really comfortably, because for him it's not about talking about his performance, it's about talking about how he makes the movie, why he made the movie. It's always about the relationship with the director, and he can talk about that for days, because he's talking about the art, he's talking about the process of the work, he's not talking about the fact that he got nominated for an Oscar. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't any less like incredible when it happened. Yeah. And I was thrilled for it, and also helps more people see the film at the end of the day. Like, I think that's the other thing that really comes out of the awards, is that it really puts us, which is why it's so crucial for independent film and sort of smaller movies. And I think that's why the Academy is so crucial, because it's really the primary way that you get more press and more eyeballs on a lot of those movies that that are not made by Marvel, and they're not that are not being blasted into cinemas thousands of cinemas all over the world. So I think that the awards recognition really helps a lot of those movies get additional press that they wouldn't necessarily afford without it.
Yeah, so it's exciting and it's useful, but the real kind of sense of fulfillment comes from the work itself and making a connection with your audience, right?
Yeah, 100%. Or you're just going to be upset more than you're rewarded, because you can. I mean, I have seen so much amazing television and so many amazing movies that have never gotten any recognition, and it's not there's great work that doesn't get recognized, that's out there too. And so I think if you build your career around it, you're going to be unhappy. It's fine. That doesn't mean that when it happens to you, it's not a wonderful, marvelous surprise, and that's great. It just shouldn't be the thing that dictates your happiness, in my opinion.
Yeah, good. I'm glad your happiness isn't so fragile, Lynette. Speaking of projects that, in this case, did find success, let's move on to The Accountant. That was a very different style of film, maybe more genre-based, certainly more genre-based than Captain Fantastic, but still challenging assumptions. It's an action thriller with an autistic central character played by Ben Affleck. What draws you to a project like that as a producer then?
The writing. I mean, the writing was brilliant. Bill Dubuque wrote the screenplay. It leapt off the page. Again, it felt like I had not seen this before. I'd not seen a character like this before in this way. It was so smart. The way that the plot unfolded, the story. It really had nothing to do with the genre. Was great. I mean, I was excited to make something that was in that world that I also felt was elevated. That I felt like you could watch and enjoy as a drama, and that you would enjoy these characters, and that we could cast it. And that was another one in terms of casting. Like, we got every single actor we went to as our first choice. Every single person in that movie was our first choice, which was so great. But yeah, it really came down to that one for me was the writing. It was just Bill created Ozark too. I mean, he's a gifted storyteller. And this was way before Ozark. Like, he just was one of those, like, oh, this guy really has it. Like, he just really has something that is special and unique. And so I was thrilled I was able to get my hands on that one and be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, cards on the table, I think this was, what I'm about to ask, was achieved very well. But do you, as a producer, feel a level of responsibility in a project like this towards the authenticity of that autistic experience? What did Ben Affleck do to prepare for that, and how does a producer support that actor's artistic process?
Yeah, I think it's not even, I mean, it's crucial, it's essential. I think anytime you're dealing with any subject matter, and when you're dealing with anything also that's not your personal experience, and you have a responsibility as a storyteller to educate and inform yourself from it, whether you're a producer, an actor, director, writer, everybody on that project. And we worked incredibly closely with the autistic community and various foundations. Ben spent a lot of time as the Gavin O'Connor, the director, with children with autism, and just fully made sure that scenes felt accurate, and that the experience was accurate, and that the portrayal was honest, even though it was a genre. It's a genre film. You're not making a drama. It is a genre film, and it's an action thriller. But you still have incredible responsibility to be truthful, and that portrayal was incredibly important to everybody, and everybody dived right into that.
Yeah, well, I think you picked a really appropriate word when you said, it's a genre film that's elevated by truthful character, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is an action film, though. Are there particular logistical challenges in a film with loads of action scenes and fighting and guns and things? Cool scenes like that.
It's just more people, more stunts, more coordination, more storyboarding, more days, more time. It's more of all of it. I mean, when you have two people in a room talking to each other, you can do that fairly efficiently with minimal crew and minimal time. And then when you have a guy running across a road and cars chasing him, it's just the coordination of that is rehearsal and stunts and people and fights. I mean, it's just more of everything. But it's really fun. It's a different muscle for me as well. It's a different producing muscle. You're just dealing with a different group of artists that you don't normally get to work with. And that was really fun. I got to meet a ton of people in the stunt community. And then of course, after I made that movie, I would see those stunt performers. Now, anytime I watch an action movie, I'm like, oh, there's I know that guy. Because they're all sort of the faceless villains. And it's whatever action movie, it's when people just get beat up and it's no one's talking. There's a real community of those individuals, the stunt performers that can do that. And now I just recognize them all because it's not a very large community, and it takes a lot of skill to do that. So that was really fun. It was really fun to kind of be part of that community and really learn about stunts in a way on that movie.
I guess it's more costly, broadly speaking, to have a film full of big set scenes and things like that. So in terms of raising money for a project, I mean, you mentioned the cast, and that's amazing that you got your first choices. It's not surprising when you look. It's crammed full of excellent actors, along with Ben Affleck, there's Anna Kendrick, there's John Lithgow, there's Jeffrey Tambor, there's the amazing star of Whiplash, J.K. Simmons. What happens first on a project like that? Do you attach names and then raise money, or does casting happen after the money's secured, or is it different every time?
It's really the chicken and egg of the entire entertainment industry, to be honest, is that question. And it really is different every time. But that really is that's literally at the heart of the business is what comes first. And that project I tried to get made for 5 years before we finally got it made. And
that's an incredible investment in time and sustaining your hope, isn't it? Is that kind of is that how it is?
As a producer, you don't get any money until the thing gets made either. So you're just working for free on stuff for years on end, years and years on end.
Wow.
I just believed in it. I believed in the material. I knew that we'd find the right director that would then find the right cast. And it just took us 5 years to do that. It took us 5 years of going through different incarnations of it. The script barely changed. The script was watertight, but often matching a piece of writing to a director when it's elevated like that, elevated genre, isn't easy. And that was one of those really interesting projects where I had that at a studio. It's hard often for studios to take risks on certain directors. They're not sure that they can cast it at the level that they want to spend the kind of money that they want. You can't make a movie like The Accountant without Ben Affleck in the lead or somebody, because it's too expensive, or they hadn't been. at that time, like they needed something to sort of justify spending the amount of money that those kinds of movies cost. And so, people like Ben want to work with directors that they trust, and because every decision that they make in terms of movies that they're in, like, really has an effect on their career and can make or break it. Anyway, so we got Gavin, and then finally, because I basically was like sort of done with all the studios, I was like, I'm really just going to go put this together by myself, and like I know the director that I think is the person to execute this. And at the time, the studios weren't sure about him, so I took the project out of all the studios. Then it was just myself and the other producer, and we gave it to Gavin and we attached him. And within a month, he had Ben Affleck on the movie. And within 2 days of Ben Affleck being on the movie, the other two studios that had originally wanted to make it both made us offers. We went with one, and then we were in production 2 months later, in pre-production 2 months later. It was one of those things where, Ben was the thing that got the movie greenlit because he's a massive movie star. And then because of Ben, we were able to then cast. Then we went through a regular casting process with everybody else. Once it was a real movie, and you're actually casting people for certain periods of time when people are available, and you're saying, okay, these are your shooting dates. Are you available? This is who we want. And we just got really lucky that everybody who we wanted was available and wanted to do it.
Sort of an emotional roller coaster for you, though, like 5 years of sustaining hope for a project, and then suddenly 2 days and it's all go. Yeah.
It's never any different. Welcome. You literally just defined my life in that one sentence.
Oh,
literally, that is. What does a producer do? That's what a producer does.
Hold their breath.
Years and years and years banging their head against the wall, and then with 2 days has to suddenly get their shit together and just make it all happen.
And that's the end of the first part of this fantastic interview with Lynette Howell Taylor. Because we had such a great chat, and Lynette was so generous with her time, we've actually got 2 parts to this interview. So do look out for part 2 coming up in a couple of weeks, where Lynette discusses her work with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga on the massive mega hit A Star Is Born, when she worked with Brie Larson, Captain Marvel, on Unicorn Store, with Tim Burton on Big Eyes, and with Mark Ruffalo and Derek Cianfrance on the massive TV hit I Know This Much Is True. She also talks to us about her experience producing the Oscars ceremony. So second part of this interview hits a lot of fascinating material. Do look out for it, and we'll see you next time. Before you go, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about our new acting training degree, the BA Acting for Stage and Screen ALRA endorsed. This is a unique drama school informed training delivered at the York College University Centre, and is suitable for students who are determined to become professional actors working in today's theatre, film and TV industries. It's unique in a few ways. Firstly, because this course is created with and endorsed by ALRA, the Academy of Live and Recorded Arts. ALRA are one of the UK's very top drama schools, and bring with them a national and international reputation for excellence in higher education drama training. Our close partnership with such a well-respected drama school will be invaluable for our training professionals. Another way we're unique is that our course is a 2-year accelerated degree. So you can achieve your degree, become a professionally trained actor, and enter the acting profession more quickly, and with fees of only £8,640 a year. This is because we're really conscious that the overall cost of funding degree study has massively increased over recent years, and a 2-year accelerated programme will be vastly less expensive than the conventional 3-year drama training route, especially when you take into account living costs, fees over the lifetime of a course, and shorter time studying before entering the profession. It's a full honours degree with 26 hours of contact time per week, and a wide range of opportunities to perform and to network with industry professionals. If you decide at the end of the 2 years that you want to continue your studies, then there is the possibility of studying at master's level at ALRA. So if this sounds like the kind of place you can imagine yourself being, learning practically how to be an actor on both stage and screen, and getting loads of really meaningful performance experience, being seen by industry professionals, and maybe going on to do a master's at ALRA, or just getting into being a working actor quicker than your peers, then you need to apply to the BA Acting for Stage and Screen ALRA endorsed through UCAS, course code BA45. You'll be asked to audition with us, and if you're successful, we will work with you to make your experience an exceptional 2 years, which will set you on the course towards your future success. Keep following us on Instagram at York College BA Acting for exciting announcements throughout the year, and do keep listening and subscribe to the Acting for Stage and Screen podcast for more conversations with fantastic theatre, film and TV industry guests in the future.